The slap echoed through the crowded cafe like a gunshot. Marcus Williams sat frozen, blood trickling from his split lip, while his 8-year-old daughter, Zara, watched with trembling hands wrapped around her hot chocolate. The bully named Damon laughed, circling his prey like a wolf sensing weakness. "What's wrong, old man? Too scared to fight back in front of your little princess?" Every customer looked away. No one moved, but something shifted in Marcus's eyes, something cold, something calculating, something that hadn't surfaced in 5 years. His calloused hands, the same hands that built wooden furniture and braided Zara's hair every morning, now rested perfectly still on the table. Damon saw a coward. He didn't see the ghost. He didn't know that those quiet hands had once ended threats far more dangerous than him in the shadows of Fallujah. And he certainly didn't know that touching Zara would be the worst mistake of his life. Saturday morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Ruby's cafe, painting golden rectangles across worn wooden tables and checkered floors. The smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls drifted through the air, mixing with the gentle hum of conversation from the dozen or so customers scattered throughout the small establishment. An elderly couple shared a newspaper in the corner booth. A young mother wrestled with a toddler and a stack of pancakes near the back. This was the heartbeat of small-town America, the kind of place where everybody knew everybody and strangers were noticed immediately. Marcus Williams sat in his usual booth by the window, the one with a cracked vinyl seat that nobody else ever wanted, watching his daughter Zara carefully arrange the marshmallows in her hot chocolate into what she called a snowman family. Her small fingers worked with intense concentration, tongue poking out slightly as she positioned each puffy white piece with surgical precision. The morning light caught the darkness of her hair, and Marcus felt the familiar ache in his chest that came from loving something so completely it terrified him. At 45 years old, Marcus looked like exactly what he appeared to be, a working man with calloused hands and tired eyes. His flannel shirt was faded but clean, his jeans worn soft from years of sawdust and sweat. There were scars on his hands that he told people came from woodworking accidents, and that was true enough for the recent ones. The older scars, the ones that ran along his knuckles and up his forearms, those had different stories he never told. He ran a small woodworking shop on the edge of town now, crafting custom furniture for neighbors and the occasional city client who wanted something rustic and authentic. His hands, which had once disassembled and reassembled weapons in complete darkness, now shaped oak and walnut and cherry into tables and chairs and cribs. It was honest work, quiet work. The kind of work that let him be home when Zara got off the school bus every afternoon. Zara looked up from her marshmallow creation with a gap-toothed grin that still managed to stop Marcus's heart every single time. She had her mother's eyes, that impossible shade of brown that looked like honey catching sunlight, and her mother's stubborn chin, Jasmine's chin, the same chin that had argued with him about everything from what color to paint the nursery to whether he should accept that final deployment. She had won that argument. She always won those arguments. And then, 3 months after he came home from his last mission, a drunk driver ran a red light on Highway 18 at 2:30 in the afternoon, and Jasmine was gone. Just like that. No warning. No chance to say goodbye. She had been on her way to pick up Zara from daycare. Marcus had been in the garage building a rocking horse for their daughter's 3rd birthday. He had been sanding the curve of the neck when the doorbell rang, and somehow he had known even before he opened the door and saw the 2 officers standing there with their hats in their hands. The rocking horse still sat in the corner of his workshop, unfinished. He couldn't bring himself to complete it, and he couldn't bring himself to throw it away. "Daddy, look." Zara held up her cup triumphantly. The daddy snowman is the biggest because he has to protect the baby snowman from the hot chocolate ocean. Marcus felt something crack in his chest, the way it always did when Zara said things like that without knowing how deeply they cut. He reached across the table and tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear. That's a very smart daddy snowman, he said quietly. He's lucky to have such a good artist, making sure he's strong enough for the job. The bell above the cafe door jingled, and Marcus's eyes flicked automatically toward the entrance. An old habit from another life. His body registered the threat assessment before his conscious mind caught up. 3 men, young and aggressive, the leader displaying dominance behavior, the followers showing signs of intoxication and nervousness. In another life, Marcus would have cataloged exit points, improvised weapons, optimal engagement distances. Now he simply noted and returned his attention to his daughter. 3 men walked in, their voices too loud for the sleepy Saturday morning atmosphere. The one in front was young, maybe late 20s, with the kind of swagger that came from never having faced real consequences. He wore expensive sneakers that had never seen an honest day's work and a gold chain that caught the light when he moved. His 2 companions flanked him like satellites, their eyes darting around the room with nervous energy. Marcus turned back to his daughter, but something in his peripheral vision kept tracking the 3 men as they approached the counter. Keisha, the young waitress who always snuck Zara extra whipped cream, stood behind the register with her customer service smile firmly in place. She couldn't have been more than 22, working her way through community college 1 double shift at a time. "Hey, sweetheart," the man in front said, leaning against the counter. "How about you give me your number along with that coffee?" His voice carried across the small cafe, designed to establish territory. Keisha's smile flickered but held. "Just the coffee today, sir? What size would you like?" The man laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Playing hard to get. I like that." He reached across the counter and touched her arm, his fingers lingering on her skin. Keisha stepped back, her face going pale. "Sir, please, don't touch me." Marcus's hand stopped moving. Zara was telling him something about school, but the words washed over him without registering. His attention had narrowed to a single point. The space between the man's hand and Keisha's arm. The fear in her eyes. He knew he should stay seated. He knew that getting involved in other people's problems was a good way to create problems of his own. But some lessons were more important than safety. Marcus stood up slowly, the motion drawing the attention of half the cafe. He wasn't a particularly tall man, maybe 6 feet in his work boots, but there was something about the way he moved that made him seem larger than his physical space. He walked toward the counter with the unhurried pace of a man who had learned that speed wasn't nearly as important as intention. "Excuse me," he said, and his voice was soft, almost gentle. The lady said, "No." The man turned, irritation flashing across his features before settling into amusement. "Mind your own business, old man. This is between me and the pretty girl." Marcus positioned himself between Keisha and the 3 men. "She asked you not to touch her. That makes it my business. I think maybe you boys should get your coffee somewhere else today." The man's amusement curdled into something uglier. He stepped closer, close enough that Marcus could smell the stale alcohol on his breath. "You think you can tell me what to do? You know who I am?" Marcus didn't blink. "I know what you are, and I'm asking you nicely to leave." The man's face twisted and his hand came up fast. The slap connected with Marcus's cheek, snapping his head to the side. He tasted blood where his lips split against his teeth. The cafe erupted in gasps and the scraping of chairs as people moved away from the violence. Marcus heard Zara cry out, "Daddy," and the sound nearly broke his careful control. He turned his head slowly back to face the man who had just struck him, and he made a choice. He chose to stay still. He chose to bleed. He chose to let this man think he had won. Damon Mitchell stared at Marcus with a mixture of contempt and confusion. He had expected fear. He had expected groveling. What he got instead was nothing. Marcus stood perfectly still, blood trickling from his split lip, his eyes fixed on Damon's face with an expression that was completely blank. "What's wrong, old man?" Damon heard himself say. "Too scared to fight back in front of your little princess?" He jerked his chin toward Zara. Damon laughed, the sound too loud. That's what I thought. Just another coward pretending to be a hero. He turned to Keisha. See that, sweetheart? No one's going to save you. Marcus's voice cut through the cafe like a blade. My daughter is watching. The words were quiet, almost conversational, but something in their tone made Damon's spine stiffen. I need you to understand that. My daughter is watching everything that happens in this room, and I need her to learn the right lessons today. Damon snorted. What lessons? How to be a pathetic pushover. No, Marcus said, his voice unchanged. The lesson that strength isn't about hurting people. The lesson that a real man knows when to stay his hand. He reached up slowly and wiped the blood from his lip. You're going to leave now. You're going to take your friends and walk out that door, and you're going to think carefully about the kind of man you want to be. Damon felt the rage building. You don't tell me what to do. He spat. You know who my uncle is? He's the sheriff of this whole county. One phone call and your life becomes hell. Marcus's expression didn't change. I'm going to go back to my daughter now, he said. I'm going to sit with her and finish our Saturday breakfast. He started to turn away, and something snapped in Damon. He grabbed Marcus's shoulder, spinning him back around. Don't you walk away from me, old man. I'm not done with you. And that was when Marcus's hand moved. It wasn't fast. Not the way Damon had expected. It was economical, precise. Marcus's fingers wrapped around Damon's wrist and twisted, and suddenly Damon was on his knees. His arm bent at an angle that sent white-hot lightning shooting up to his shoulder. He tried to cry out, but Marcus's other hand had found his throat. Not squeezing, not yet, just resting there with pressure that suggested everything. The whole movement had taken less than 2 seconds. I gave you a choice, Marcus said, voice still soft, still gentle. You chose wrong every single time. He leaned down, bringing his face close to Damon's, and for the first time, Damon saw something in those dark eyes, something old and cold and patient. My name is Marcus Williams. Some people used to call me the Ghost. I spent 15 years making problems disappear for the United States government, and I was very good at my job. I retired because I wanted to be a father more than I wanted to be a weapon. But the weapon is still here. It's always here. Damon couldn't breathe. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't know. Marcus's grip tightened. You're not sorry that you hit a man who wasn't fighting back. You're not sorry that you threatened my daughter. You're sorry because you're scared now, and scared is the only language you understand. Zara's voice floated across the cafe, small and uncertain. Daddy. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, the cold thing behind his gaze had retreated. He released Damon. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stand up. You're going to apologize to Keisha. You're going to walk out that door, and you're never coming back here again. Damon scrambled to his feet, clutching his arm. His companions had already backed toward the door. Swagger evaporated. Damon stumbled toward the exit. The door slammed shut, and the bell jingled cheerfully. Marcus walked back to the booth on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. All he could see was Zara's face, the way she was looking at him like he had suddenly become a stranger wearing her father's skin. He slid into the seat across from her, his movements careful. Hey, sweetheart, he said softly. It's okay. Everything's okay now. Zara didn't say anything for a long moment. Her small hands were wrapped around her cup, knuckles tight. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Daddy, your lip is bleeding. Marcus touched his mouth, felt the sticky warmth there, and grabbed a napkin from the dispenser. It's just a scratch, baby. Nothing to worry about. But Zara's eyes stayed fixed on the red stain spreading across the white paper, and Marcus knew that nothing he said right now would make this moment unhappen. The cafe door burst open, and 2 uniformed officers walked in. The older one scanned the room with practiced efficiency, his gaze settling on Marcus with a flicker of recognition. Officer James Carter had been on the force for 23 years, and he knew trouble when he saw it. "Mr. Williams," Carter said, voice carefully neutral, "we got a call about a disturbance. You want to tell me what happened here?" Marcus stood up slowly, keeping his hands visible. "Officer Carter, there was a situation. 3 men came in and started harassing Keisha behind the counter. I asked them to leave. One of them took exception to my request and took a swing at me." He touched his split lip. I may have discouraged him from continuing. Carter's eyes flicked to Marcus's lip, then to Keisha still standing pale and shaken behind the counter. And then Carter asked, "And then they left," Marcus said simply. "That's all. Just a misunderstanding." The cafe door opened again, and the atmosphere shifted. Sheriff Wayne Mitchell walked in, face flushed with fury. Behind him, supported by his companions, was Damon, still clutching his arm. "That's him," Damon said, pointing at Marcus. "That's the psycho who attacked me. I want him arrested." Wayne stopped in the middle of the cafe. "Mr. Williams, my nephew tells me you assaulted him without provocation. That's a serious allegation." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Your nephew put his hands on me first. He put his hands on Keisha. There are witnesses." Wayne's smile didn't reach his eyes. Witnesses can be mistaken, especially in confusing situations. He turned to Carter. "Take Mr. Williams into custody. Assault and battery." Zara was on her feet before Marcus could stop her. "No," she screamed. "You can't take my daddy." She ran to Marcus and wrapped her arms around his waist. "Please don't take him away." Marcus's heart shattered. He knelt down, taking Zara's face in his hands. "Listen to me," he said, voice steady even as everything inside him fell apart. "I need you to be brave right now. I'm going to go with these officers, and we're going to talk about what happened. And then I'm going to come home. I promise you, Zara. I promise on Mommy's name. I will come home." Zara's sobs shook her whole body. "But what if they take you away like they took Mommy?" Marcus pulled her close, pressing his lips to the top of her head. "Nothing is going to take me away from you," he whispered. "Nothing in this world or any other. I will always come back for you. Do you understand?" Zara nodded against his chest. Marcus looked at Keisha. "Can you stay with her?" Keisha nodded immediately, gently extracting Zara from Marcus's arms. They led Marcus out and into a squad car. The last thing he saw was Zara's face pressed against the glass, tears streaming, small hand raised in a wave. At the station, they processed him with bureaucratic efficiency. Wayne was there through all of it. The moment came in the interrogation room, concrete box with metal table and 2 chairs. Wayne sat across from Marcus. "Let me tell you how this goes. You sign a confession admitting you attacked my nephew. You plead guilty, serve 6 months. This goes away." Wayne leaned back. "Or you fight it, and I make your life hell." Marcus's expression didn't change. "There are witnesses, security cameras." Wayne smiled. "Cameras malfunction. Witnesses change stories. You think anyone takes your word over mine?" Marcus weighed his options. Fighting meant exposure, questions about his past, but accepting meant Zara in foster care for 6 months with strangers. "I want a phone call," Marcus said. "That's my right." Wayne shrugged. "Call whoever you want." He slid a phone across the table and Marcus dialed a number from memory, one connecting to a world he'd sworn to leave behind. The phone rang 3 times. "Ghost," said the voice. Familiar, authoritative. "I was wondering when you'd call." Colonel Raymond Hayes arrived 2 hours later with 2 black SUVs that looked government issue even without the plates to prove it. He emerged wearing civilian clothes, khakis, and a polo shirt like any other retiree. But nothing was civilian about how he moved or the way his eyes swept the parking lot. 2 men flanked him, both wearing the carefully neutral expressions of professionals who had seen things they would never discuss. Raymond Hayes had spent 35 years in military intelligence, had commanded operations on 4 continents, and had retired with enough connections to make senators nervous. He had been Marcus's commanding officer for the last 7 years of his service, had been the one to sign off on Marcus's honorable discharge when Jasmine died. Wayne met him in the lobby, already wearing the suspicious expression of a man who sensed his world beginning to shift. "Can I help you?" he asked. "This is a restricted area." Hayes smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Sheriff Mitchell. My name is Raymond Hayes. I'm here about the man you're holding in your interrogation room." He reached into his pocket and produced a business card and watched Wayne's face drain of color as he read it. "I don't understand," Wayne said slowly. "Who exactly are you?" Hayes's smile widened. "I'm the man who's going to explain to you very carefully why you're going to release Marcus Williams immediately, with no charges and a sincere apology." They moved to Wayne's office. Hayes sat without invitation. "Let me tell you a story. There was a soldier once, one of the best I ever commanded. For 15 years he went places that didn't exist to do things that never happened." Wayne's face went gray. Hayes raised a hand. 5 years ago his wife died. Car accident. Something broke inside him. The only thing keeping him going was his daughter. So he retired, moved to a small town, started a business. For 5 years it worked. Hayes stood, moving around the office. Then your nephew walked into a cafe and decided to feel big by hitting a man who wouldn't fight back. Your nephew put his hands on that soldier's daughter. And now we're here because you made the catastrophically stupid decision to protect your nephew instead of doing your job. Wayne's voice came strangled. "I didn't know." Hayes laughed coldly. "That's the point." He set a flash drive on Wayne's desk. "This contains security footage unedited, your nephew's criminal history including 3 assault charges mysteriously dropped, and financial records showing campaign contributions from people keeping you compliant." Wayne stared at the drive. "Where did you get that?" Hayes smiled. "From people very good at getting things. The same people who, if anything happens to Marcus Williams or his daughter, will make sure every news outlet receives a copy." The door opened. One of Hayes's men leaned in. "Sir, FBI is on their way. Irregularities in the sheriff's records." Wayne went white. Hayes patted his shoulder. "I told you if you were lucky my explanation would be the only one needed." Marcus was released 20 minutes later. He walked out into afternoon sunlight, and Hayes was waiting. "Ghost. Good to see you." Marcus took his hand. "Colonel, I didn't expect." Hayes waved it off. "You called?" "I came." "That's how it works." Marcus shook his head. "Running isn't the answer. Zara's got friends here. School. She's already lost her mother." Hayes nodded. "Then stay. The sheriff won't bother you again." "I appreciate it," Marcus said quietly. "But I'd rather handle things myself now. Zara needs to see her father can solve problems without." Hayes understood, without becoming the weapon again. "One more thing," Hayes said softly. "Jasmine would have been proud of you. Walking away from a fight you could have ended in seconds. That took more strength than anything you ever did for us." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. She would have been disappointed too, for letting it go that far. Hayes shook his head. "What you really are is a father who loves his daughter. Everything else is just tools. You choose when to use them. That's what matters." Marcus found Zara on a bench outside Ruby's cafe, Keisha beside her. Zara's face was tear-stained and exhausted. She looked up, and for a moment neither moved. Then Zara launched herself into his arms. "Daddy, you came back. You promised and you came back." Marcus held her tight. "I will always come back. Always. Nothing could keep me from you." Keisha wiped her eyes. "I'm so glad you're okay, Mr. Williams." Marcus looked at her. "Thank you for staying with her." Marcus sat on the bench, pulling Zara onto his lap. The weight of her, the smell of her strawberry shampoo. These anchored him, reminded him why he'd walked away from one life. Daddy. Zara's voice was muffled against his shirt. Who are you really? Marcus felt the weight of the question settle over him. He had known this moment would come eventually, had dreaded it and prepared for it, but there was no avoiding it now. Zara had seen too much. She deserved the truth, or at least as much of it as an 8-year-old could understand. I used to be a soldier, he said slowly, choosing each word with care. A long time ago. Before you were born. I worked for the government doing very difficult, dangerous things. Things that kept people safe, but things that also. He paused. Things that sometimes required me to hurt people. Bad people, mostly. People who wanted to hurt others. But still. Zara tilted her head back to look at his face, her brown eyes searching his. Is that why you knew how to stop that mean man? Because you were a soldier? Marcus nodded. Yes, baby. That's why. I learned how to fight a long time ago, and even though I don't do it anymore, I still remember how. Zara's brow furrowed. But you didn't fight him at first. He hit you and you just stood there. Why? Why didn't you stop him right away? Marcus's heart clenched. Of all the questions she could have asked, this was the one that mattered most. Because fighting isn't always the answer, he said softly. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose not to fight, even when you could win. I didn't want you to see me hurting someone, Zara. I didn't want you to think that violence is how we solve problems. He touched her cheek, wiping away a tear. But when he threatened you, when he talked about hurting you, I couldn't just stand there anymore. Protecting you is the most important thing in the world to me. More important than being peaceful. More important than anything. Zara searched his face. Mommy knew, didn't she? Marcus nodded. She knew everything. She used to say I was like a dragon who decided to stop breathing fire. Still dangerous, but choosing to be gentle. A tiny smile flickered across Zara's face. Daddy the dragon. She snuggled closer. Will you teach me how to protect myself? Marcus hesitated. I'll teach you some things. Not how to hurt people, but how to be strong. How to walk away from fights you don't need to win. They sat as the sun descended. Zara's breathing deepened. She had fallen asleep against his chest. Marcus didn't move. He just sat, watching the light change. 1 week later, Marcus and Zara walked through Ruby's cafe door at 9 Saturday morning, just like they had every Saturday for the past 5 years. The bell jingled overhead. But something in the room shifted as the other customers looked up and saw them enter. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Coffee cups stopped halfway to lips. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. The cafe knew now. The whole town knew. The quiet carpenter with the gentle hands was something more than he appeared. Marcus guided Zara to their usual booth by the window and slid into his customary spot across from her. Everything was the same as it had always been. The worn wooden tables, the checkered floors, the smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls. But everything was different too in ways that couldn't be measured. Keisha appeared at their table almost immediately, her smile brighter than it had been a week ago, her shoulders held a little straighter. There was a confidence in her step that hadn't been there before. The usual? She asked, and Marcus nodded. The usual. Daddy, Zara said, not looking up from arranging sugar packets on the table. Can I ask you something? Marcus leaned forward. You can ask me anything, sweetheart. Always. Zara's small fingers paused their work. Are you happy being a dragon who doesn't breathe fire anymore? The question hit Marcus somewhere in the center of his chest. Was he happy? It was such a simple question, but the answer was anything but simple. I'm happy when I'm with you, he said finally. When I see you smile and hear you laugh. I'm happy when we make pancakes on Sunday and they turn out like weird blobs. I'm not happy all the time. Nobody is. but I have enough happiness to keep going, and every day with you gives me more." Zara smiled. "That's a good answer, Daddy." Later that afternoon, they stood in the backyard as Marcus showed Zara how to stand, feet shoulder width, weight balanced, hands up. "This isn't about fighting. This is about being confident. The most important thing isn't how hard you can hit, it's knowing when to walk away. Fighting should always be last." Zara dropped her hands. "But what if you can't walk away?" Marcus knelt so they were eye to eye. "Then you do whatever it takes to get safe. You kick, scream, bite if you have to. Then you run. Don't stop until you're safe." He put hands on her shoulders. "I hope you never need any of this, but if that day comes, I want you ready." As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they sat on the porch steps together. Zara leaned against his shoulder, her breathing slow and content, her small hand wrapped around his calloused fingers. The neighborhood was quiet, filled with the sounds of evening. Dogs barking in the distance, the gentle hum of air conditioners, the occasional car passing on the main road. It was ordinary. It was peaceful. It was everything Marcus had never known he wanted until he had it. "Daddy," Zara said softly, "I'm glad you're my daddy. Even the dragon parts." Marcus pressed a kiss to the top of her head, breathing in the familiar strawberry scent of her shampoo. The same shampoo Jasmine had used, because some things were too important to change. "I'm glad you're my daughter," he said quietly. "Even when you put too many marshmallows in your hot chocolate." Zara giggled. The sound like music, like hope, like all the reasons Marcus had chosen to stop being a weapon and start being a father. There's no such thing as too many marshmallows. Mommy always said that. Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Yeah," he said softly. She did. They sat together as the first stars began to appear one by one in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there the world was still dangerous, still full of people like Damon who used their strength to hurt instead of protect. Somewhere out there, the ghost that lived inside Marcus waited in its box, patient and ready, knowing that it might be called upon again someday. But here in this moment, on this porch, with his daughter's hand in his, and the evening breeze carrying the memory of his wife's smile, there was only peace. Marcus Williams had been many things in his life: a soldier, a weapon, a ghost who moved through shadows and left nothing behind but silence. He had done terrible things for noble reasons, and he carried those memories like stones in his pockets, always present, never forgotten. But the only title that mattered now was the one Zara had given him 8 years ago in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and hope, when a tiny hand had wrapped around his finger for the first time and refused to let go. Father. It was enough. It would always be enough. And somewhere Marcus knew Jasmine was watching. She was watching and smiling that smile of hers. The one that said she had known all along what he was capable of becoming. Not just a warrior, not just a protector, but a man who had learned the hardest lesson of all. That true strength wasn't about the power to destroy. It was about the courage to build, to nurture, to love without reservation, and to choose gentleness when violence would have been so much easier. The dragon had stopped breathing fire, but his heart had never burned brighter.